Glad you're here on the front porch. We almost didn't have it on the front porch. As I listened to the announcements this morning and Rosie reading it, I thought, oh no. And that wasn't Rosie's fault, by the way. She always reads what she's given. It was just some kind of mix up there. So now, if you came here hoping for some music, they're going to reschedule that from what I'll talk with Heather tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have the high school kids here. But it's I'll tell you, this is I never realized how many relatives Rhoda had. We were just and she'll explain this much further, but her maiden name was Souter, and her and her mother's name was Bergie, and she ends up as a Landis. So she's somehow related to all of you. See, that's one thing when you move in from Pittsburgh, you're not related to anybody here. So we really appreciate you coming tonight. It's look forward to the stories. The first place I met Rhoda was in the quilting room. And then she explained who she was. Well, I had Bob, like my second year, and then I had Anita, and then I had Mark, and knew exactly where they live. And I used to love driving by their farm in Moorwood there and looking at the sunflowers. I was, if you've never saw those, do they still do that?
No.
No. Too bad, you missed it. Well, let's open with prayer. Father, thanks again so much for bringing us together. Pray that you would guide our words and our steps, that you would be glorified tonight. Thank you that Rhoda's willing to share what you've done in her life. And thank you, Lord, for your love for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, let's start out with singing our usual favorite, Great is Thy Faithfulness. Nelda? Our guest on the front porch is Rhoda Landis. You probably are either related to her or know her. She's so friendly with everybody, and she is unbelievably funny. I just love hanging around her. So they're always looking, like I said, for people to quilt. If you just want to go up there and sit and laugh with people, Rhoda's the one to go up with. So that's great. So Rhoda, tell us a little about your family.
Well, first, before we start, I want to tell you, I have a hard time calling you Dick, because all I ever heard was Mr. Close. And my kids still call you Mr. Close after all these years. And I've got to say, thank you for being a good teacher. They said you were the best teacher they had. So.
That's because they gave them all A's, that's why.
Well, I don't know if you did. But, to begin with, I was born near Moorwood. The road today is called Hunsicker Road. That's where my farm was, where I grew up in a 10-room farmhouse on the Souter Farm, where my grandparents had lived, and then my dad Wilmer, and then my brother Wilmer, and then now my nephew Wilmer Blaine. He lives there now. So it's in the
Wilmers.
Yes, it was, and my parents were Wilmer and Marietta Berge Souter. And there were 3 boys and 4 girls in my dad's family. And my mom's family, there were 3 boys and 2 girls. And I had 4 brothers and 4 sisters.
Wow.
And I'm the only one living anymore.
Okay.
And out of all of them.
Where did you fit into there?
I was the second youngest.
Second youngest, okay.
My brother Harley was a year and a half younger than I was. And then I was, and then I had a sister, Mary.
Were they all as funny as you?
I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, and I only remember my mom's dad. I don't remember anything of my dad's family, his parents. But I do remember my mom's dad. They grew up on the Indian Creek Road, across from the country club, near the cow path, and it was a farm there on Indian Creek Road. That's where she grew up, and today now it's all houses when I go by there.
Right. Yep.
No, and I remember my granddad. He had a Model T Ford. And it had a rumble seat on, if you know what a rumble seat was.
Yeah.
Anyway, when you'd open it, it looked like a trunk. When you'd open it, there was room for 2 people in there.
Okay.
And I remember him driving in our lane on that with that car. That's the only. And I remember going to visit him, and he had this old kitchen and old wood stove, so he's the only grandparent I really remember. And my dad's 2 brothers were school teachers. And they went to Westchester. And my mom used to call it Westchester Normal School.
They used to call teachers' colleges normal schools.
That's where they went. His 2 brothers, and one was Menno and one was Elvin. And I asked my dad a number of times why he didn't go to college, and then he said, well, somebody had to stay home and help Papa on the farm.
Yeah.
And he said, but I didn't really like school, so it didn't bother him. He wanted to be a farmer, so that's what he was. But eventually my Uncle Menno did have a farm on Souter Road down near Elroy.
Okay, right.
But he was a pastor at the Franconia Mennonite Church for years. And he was a pastor there. And now Elvin, he started the Souter store, if you know Souter.
Oh, yeah.
But it was Allebach and Souter when it started, because Alphys Allebach and him went together and opened this store at the top of Main Street. And they catered to plain clothes to the Mennonites in this area.
Right on the corner of Main and Summit.
Yes, right. That was, but eventually then when Alphys Allebach died, then it just became the Souter store. And then they were selling mostly fabrics and quilts for quilts, and they had quilt classes there and everything, and so I don't really remember how long that went, but I do remember when he had the store in Souderton. I remember as a kid, we'd walk up those steps. There were like 10 cement steps, and you'd open the front door, and right there was a huge case filled with candy. He sold candy, and we never got candy at home, and boy, we liked to go there, because as soon as you walked in the door, Uncle Alvin would come, well, what kind of candy you want tonight? And then he'd give us candy, and then before we went home, he gave us all a bag filled with candy.
Oh, wow.
And so, needless to say, we liked going there. let's see, and then Elvin, then my mom, she went to school there. If you come out the Indian Creek Road and it's cow path,
Yeah.
and if you go north toward Morewood Road, that was the school. It's still
it's on the
there.
left.
It has, yes, it
Yeah.
still has that's where my mom went to school.
Huh.
And
I have a student who used to live in that house. Yeah, yeah.
that's where, and then anyway, and then Mom used to talk about this family that lived on the corner of Morewood Road there in Campbell, that big house.
That big with the pillars.
There were African Americans living in there.
Really?
At that time, and the two boys came to the school there, and they were very unruly, she'd say, and they couldn't keep a teacher. So my Uncle Elvin, they got him there.
Uh-huh.
And the first thing he did when they were acting up, he took his belt off, and he whacked them over the behind. and Mom says, they behaved after that. But she said they were very intelligent, they found out. I guess today they'd say they had ADD.
Probably.
But she said they were very intelligent, and oftentimes she'd say, I often wondered what happened to those two boys, because they were really good, but they just didn't, they just didn't like, so anyway.
I didn't have to do that with any of your kids.
Oh, well, hey, if you did, yeah, then you deserved it, I guess.
In class, Bob would just sit there and laugh. Now I know. Now that I know you, I now understand Bob even better.
Wow. And Souderton was named for Henry O. Landis.
Yeah,
Souder, Henry O. Souder.
Souder, right.
And I got a lot of this information from Doris Kolb. She says I'm her second or third cousin. So she has the whole Souder Frankschaft. She knows that. Anyway, my dad used to say that Henry Souder was his third cousin. Right? Doris? I think so.
Yeah.
And Henry and I, she said, would have been fifth cousins. So there was.
You got roots here.
Yes, I have roots here. And so anyway, and then my Uncle Elvin, I told you that, the Souder store. And anyway, now I'm going to repeat.
That's okay.
But anyway, and then the farm life, I'm following your questions, by
That's
the
fine.
way. The neighbors we had, one was Bob Kratz. I don't know if he's here. He lived.
Bob? Yeah, there he is.
Oh, there he is.
He's
He lived across the field from me.
Yeah, he told us where he lived. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then this way lived Richard Cooker, Phyllis's husband.
Yeah.
He lived straight across. And then Betty Billinger, she lived out the road from me.
Holy cow.
And Grace Moyer, she lived about a mile from me. And when you lived in a country like that, living a mile, you're a neighbor.
Yeah.
You're a neighbor. And then when I was in elementary school, Gladys Clemens and Evelyn Burkhardt moved just out the road from me.
Holy cow.
So I got all these people here that...
You have all your neighbors. You moved in with your neighbors.
Yeah, right. Well, Bob Kratz is my neighbor now, here.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, let's see. And my dad, I think, was an organic farmer because before anybody talked about organic farmer, because he never used pesticides or anything. I mean, and he rotated crops. See, back then, that's what they did. And one year they planted something in one field and another, and that kept the bugs away.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to use any. And he, as far as fertilizer, he only had the cow.
How big was the farm?
Boy, I don't really remember how many acres we had on that farm.
Was it mostly a crop farm?
Yeah. Well, no, my dad had cows.
Cows too?
He did. Excuse me. He did have cows, and I remember. I don't know. I think I must have been about 12. I decided I wanted to milk a cow. So my dad, he put the bucket underneath the cow and set me on a stool, and the next thing I knew, the cow kicked the bucket and I went with it. So that was the last time I tried to milk a cow. I didn't try after that.
I think I'm going to talk to Heather and see if we can get a cow milking contest. How many of you people have ever milked a cow? Oh,
Oh, look at that.
I'm going to talk to Heather. Oh, this ought to be fun.
Well,
Okay.
I don't think the cow liked the feel of my hands because that's why it kicked the and but my oldest brother was married before my youngest brother was born.
Oh, wow.
And so I really don't, and then came my 3 sisters, and I don't really remember too much about them because I wasn't here yet, or I was too young, and I only remember like I said, my youngest brother Harley and I, and my sister Mary, and then I had another brother Ray, and he was in his middle 20s before he got married, so I remember him living in the house. That's all. I don't remember the others until I was older. And
where did you go to school?
That's my
that's coming?
Don't rush me.
Don't. You're sounding like Addie Gaiman now.
Well, I have my notes.
Yeah, we were doing our talk, and she said, Dick, I'm not done yet. Keep going. I want to hear all these stories.
Well, anyway, so I really don't remember until I was a little older, and then they were married already. So Ray was the only one I really remember. And what I do remember about him was his bedroom was at the end of the house, the other end. And as a kid, I would snoop around,
Yeah.
and I found this thing on his bureau. It was a penny inside and silver around the outside. And I thought, what is this? And it said, The Click, Walnut Street, Philadelphia. I still have it, by the way. And then I said, what's this? Here it was a nightclub in Philly. Him and his couple of his friends went down to see this singer. And I said, well, who is this singer? Frank Sinatra.
Really?
Yes. They went to see. Oh, I didn't know who Frank Sinatra was.
What is a Mennonite doing in a nightclub in Philadelphia?
I don't know. But he was there. And he gave me that, and why he gave it to me, I have no idea, but I still have it. In fact, I was looking through some stuff last week, and I found it. So I still have that. So
we don't have nightclubs here.
no. But but then Harley and I, we got along really well. Now my sister Mary, her and I we fought a lot.
Yeah.
Because she was always bossing me around.
Yeah, that's bad.
But now, if Harley was here, maybe he'd say I bossed him around, but I don't think so because he was too close to my age. But we used to him and I really got along well, and we'd do kinds of stuff outside, and we were always barefooted, and I was always stepping in rusty nails and all kinds of junk. And hey, back then we didn't go to get a tetanus shot either.
Yeah.
But my mom was a great believer in turpentine. She put turpentine on everything. Yes. Don't ask me why, but when I step in a rusty nail or something, out came the turpentine. I don't know. It must have worked because we never got tetanus or anything. So I don't know.
That sounds like a Mennonite urgent care.
Well, I don't know, but I don't know. We didn't.
I don't know.
We didn't get.
God protected you, let's say.
I mean, hey, they didn't have the money to go to a doctor,
right?
You know. So I mean, it was all those kind of stuff, and sometimes I think maybe that was better.
Yeah, maybe.
But anyway, another thing, about growing up on a farm, you do learn about life, but you do learn about death too. And I remember there was a time we had so many cats because we have to have on a farm to keep the mice away. So Harley and I decided one day we're going to count these cats. So we started counting. We got up to 20, and then we gave up because they ran away. But I don't know how many times I saw cats giving birth to kittens.
Huh.
I mean, we're just part of life, And my pop, sometimes he was with us. He never explained anything. He just looked, and we just looked. And so that was...
That's farm life, yeah.
That's farm life. Sure. But then death, now, I don't know, I guess I'll say this, but my dad had a horse, and his name was Dick, by the way. But anyway...
You aren't a prophet, are you?
But anyway... anyway, I don't remember my dad using horses to farm.
Yeah.
He always had a tractor, but why he kept this one horse is beyond me. I don't know.
Huh.
But he had this horse, and it was behind the barn in a pen, and it was getting really old, and he said, well, he said he has to put it down. So he called North Penn High at that time.
Right. Oh,
So
yeah.
they came up, the guy came up, the driver, and I must have been, I don't know if I was 6 or 8 or I don't know, but anyway, he gets out of the truck and he was holding this gun. And it was a pistol, I think, because it was small.
Yeah.
And so he went up to the horse and he shot the horse.
Shot the horse.
And I still know who the guy's name was and everything. And I just remember this. And then, then he put it on the truck, wound it up, and took it away. And I'm thinking, boy, and my dad, he was with us. He saw it,
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, boy, today he would have been called up for being abusive to the children and all, But hey, that's farm
Yes,
life.
that was farm life, yeah.
That's the way it was. I mean, you just, you had, you saw life and then you saw death too.
I think your dad should change the name of the horse, though.
Well, I don't know. That's what he had. But I just remember that.
Yeah. Wow.
And then, let's see, I remember. Oh, and I also
Yeah.
remember outdoor bathrooms.
Oh.
We didn't have an indoor bathroom. And I'm telling you, you haven't lived until you had to go to that outhouse with the 4 feet of snow out there.
Oh.
And in the summer, you had bugs and bees and flying around you.
Well, I'll talk to Monique and see if we can get one of those out in the parking lot someplace.
No, I wouldn't want to go back to that again. But I do remember there was a camp in Moorwood.
Yeah.
Do you remember that,
Yeah.
Camp Emlyn?
It was after, it closed, but I remember where it was.
It's where the Branchwood Park
Yep.
is now,
Yep.
and in the 1920s it was for African American boys.
Yeah, okay.
And it was the Boys Club from Philly, and they came there and bought land from too far on both sides. It was Henry Landis. It was a farmer. I don't
Yeah,
know who it
right.
was, and they ran that camp for at least 40 years, maybe longer. And then they got into, money-wise, and so the Franconia Township bought that property then.
Right.
But what I remember about that camp is the boys would, every Sunday night, it was late afternoon toward evening, and from the camp, they would line up, there must have been at least 40 kids, and they would have 2x2s, and they'd start singing from the time they left the camp and all the way up to Moorwood Road, and then they'd make a left, and we could hear them sing at the farm. And then I had a sister that lived along Moorwood Road there, and we used to go to that house, to her house, so we could watch them. And I'm telling you, this was really something. They'd come up, they all had white shirts on, and they had dark pants, and they'd you could hear them start at the camp, and they'd be singing all the way up and all the way out Moorwood Road to Earlington. I don't know if we went that far. They turn around, they come back, and they were singing all the way. And to see that, I can still see them. That was really impressive to see these boys that they were singing. Did you ever hear that, Betty? You never did?
Our farm was way in the field.
Yours was in too far. No, we often heard them, and then sometimes we'd go over to my sister so we could see them sit on the front porch. And so anyway, and then one of the stories was, I don't know, maybe how many of you remember the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team?
Sure.
Okay, I really liked the Dodgers at that time. Don't ask me why, but I did. Anyway, the director of the camp, I think it must have been after it closed, Roy Campanella was a catcher.
Yeah, right.
And he went there to that camp when he was...
Really?
Yes, when he was 12 years old.
Yeah.
He went to that
Oh, wow.
camp.
Yeah.
And that was really something to see. And then another thing, my sister-in-law, my husband's sister, they used to go swimming in the creek there.
Creek there, yeah, sure.
The kids there.
Yeah.
And She told me this herself, that, I don't know if you kids ever heard this, but anyway, she lost her footing and she went under the water. And she told me this, the kids just stood around and they didn't know what to do. And so somebody went in and the cook from the camp came out and saved her.
Wow.
She probably would have drowned if it wouldn't have been for that cook.
Well, tell us a little bit. Let's move on to how you met your husband.
How I met my husband? Well, he lived across the field from me too. But I really didn't know. He lived near toward Burnfield. That was too far,
Okay.
you know. So I knew him, but I didn't really, Then I was with my girlfriend. We were up at, it was called Sleepy Hollow Ranch. It was a country music park in the summer. And we were up there, and then he was there with my brother and my cousin, and I don't know. And then the next week, he came driving in my lane on a motorcycle.
Ooh.
I fell for the motorcycle. He just happened to come along. I mean, I'm telling you. And then he took me for a ride, and I was sold. That was the end of that. And then he had a motorcycle. He got his first motorcycle when he was 15, and he rode it around the fields until he could drive out in the road, you know. He had one until 2016. And then
Now his first name is?
his name is Linford, but everybody called him Linny or Lynn.
Okay.
It was one of the two.
Yeah.
His mom was the only one that called him Linford. But anyway, that's how I met him, and so then we got married in November the 24th, 1955.
Okay.
And then when I got married, and then I moved over to the farm, to the Landis farm.
So the farm that you were on there in Morewood and...
Yeah, and Huntsicker Road is where I was living.
Right.
But then that's where my husband,
So
that was his farm.
That was original.
That farm was... The land for that farm was purchased in 1734 to Jacob Landis, and it's been in the Landis name ever since.
Wow.
It's been a Landis ever since. And we had the original deed, and we got John Ruth, the historian, to read it because we didn't know how to read it. And the land originally went out to the 113. That's how far it went from the house to the
huge
113.
farm.
It was. So anyway, and then my husband's great Grammy lived in the house. See, his parents lived on the side where we had moved then, and then his grandfather lived on the other side, and then his great grandmother lived there yet, and she would talk about going down to the creek to the Indians.
Sure. Yeah.
There were the Lenape Indians that were there, and they would be along the creek in the summer, but then they kept moving, and they ended up in Bucks County.
Right. Okay.
But John Ruth wrote a book about how they were chased out, and they wound up in Oklahoma.
Oh, okay.
But I know it must have been about a year or two ago. There was a Lenape Indian at our church. John Ruth brought him, and he was the chief. He was from Oklahoma, and he was at our church. Yeah, and because some of the Salford's property, the Lenape is Lenape land. Some of yeah, that's where. And then that's where. There where I lived then. Then that's where my 4 kids were born. And grew up on that farm, and
now your 4 kids are who?
Bobby was, and then Anita, and Lori. There's Lori, and Mark. Mark's the youngest.
Okay.
And so that's where we raised them then, and then.
Was Linford funny like you?
No, he was very quiet.
Very quiet.
He was the opposite.
So all your kids took after you?
Mark's more like him, I think. Mark is more, takes a little to get something out of him.
When I was teaching, like Bob, I had Bob my second, third year teaching, and there wasn't a day Bob didn't come into my class with this great big smile on his, just like his mom. When I found out that Bob was her son, I say, now I know why he was the way he was. He was happy all the time. It was great. So you know how to raise kids.
Oh, I don't know. Ask that. I don't know. But no, he was just. Well, I know the story. He came home one day and he said the football coach wanted him to go out for football. He says, I told him I don't want to play football. I want to drive tractor. He said. So he never did go out for football. he was, and then in 1999, he took over the farm, and then Anita's husband, Jerry, built us a house up near Red Hill, and we lived there 24 years, and so, till I moved here. So, and then I did a lot of canning. I was canning and freezing from the beginning of spring to fall. I did all that, and I sewed a lot, and I made the kids' clothes. And
Do you miss that?
I miss the gardening, but I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, But no, I said I'm spending more for food for me than I did for the for the poor kids when I had. I mean, it's so anyway. And then after the kids were in school, then I worked in the cafeteria at Indian Valley.
How did you?
Yeah.
Did you remember what years?
Oh, I don't remember.
Would you have been there before 1990 or some?
I don't remember.
95?
No, I don't remember what year it was, but I was there for, I don't know, a few years, and then they put me over to West Broad Street School.
Okay.
So then I was there till I retired, and then I got married. So.
Well, the teachers at Indian Valley, when I first came there in '68, Mennonites were new to me. I really didn't. And they won my heart because those ladies would make the best soups, homemade soups, and I look forward to going to school, not for the kids, but for the soups.
Well, my first job then was, I didn't tell you about going to school.
Yeah.
I went I went a half a year to the one-room schoolhouse at the end of Hunsaker Road there and Moorwood Road. That was the school, and I only went a half a year, and then Franconia School opened, and then I finished the last. But all the kids in that school, I don't know. I still have the picture of that last school because Bob Kratz is on and Betty's on it, I think.
How many of you went to Franconia at one time or another? Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, yep.
So anyway, and then I went to Franconia, and I loved school. I would have really, I like school, and then I went over there, but I had an 8th grade teacher. See, that time our marks were E for excellent, S for satisfactory, and U for unsatisfactory.
Yeah.
Well, math was I hated math, and I do to this day. And anyway, I had a teacher in 8th grade, and every time you got a U, she'd mark it in red. That was my scarlet letter. Anyway, my report card had red U's the whole way across. I had that report card for a long time. It had red U's all the way.
Way to ruin your self-image, I'll tell you that.
I don't know. It didn't bother me. I mean, it was what it is.
Well, yeah, knowing you're probably just laughing at it, so it's...
Actually, I did. It was kind of funny to see those U's. But anyway, and then when I graduated from Franconia, and then I went 1 year to Souderton. But to get to the bus, I had to walk down behind the barn through the meadow. Mm-hmm. There was a dirt road back there. Fells Road is still there. Oh. And then I walked up to Moorwood Road to get the bus.
Right. Okay.
I went 1 year, and that was just not it wasn't feasible to do it that way. But I loved school. I really did. I would have liked to go, but I couldn't. Yeah. So then after a while, then I went to, my brother-in-law had a store in Philadelphia, You know, he sold butter and eggs instead of like a huckster going
Right.
from door to door. He had this store. And so I went and worked there. I went to market Thursdays and Fridays with him and another woman. And right across from the store, there was a school, an elementary school. And I remember pretty near every Friday, this one kid, he must have been about 12, would come over to the store to talk to me about living on a farm. He thought this was the neatest thing.
Yeah, sure.
And then he said, well, what did you do on the farm? And I had to tell him. And he just was so interested. Yeah. And he said, boy, I'd really like to live on a farm. And I thought, yeah, well, you're living in the city. I don't know how that would go. But then I was there and then my next job, I worked in the hosiery mill over on School Avenue in Telford.
Yeah.
And what I did was I sewed the seams on stocking. Now, I don't know if any of you women remember stockings with seams in the back. Well, that's what I did. I sewed the stockings together. And, then I had worked there until Bobby was born, and then from then on I didn't until I went into Indian Valley then.
Yeah,
so
right.
that was my jobs then. So
yeah.
that's what I did, and the memories of raising my kids. Well, I had too many, but this one memory I have now. Anita and Bobby were teenagers at the time, and I remember one Sunday afternoon. There were like 10 kids, Norma, you were one of them, sat around my kitchen table. It was a Sunday afternoon, and somehow we got talking about corn on the cob. Don't ask me how we got into that. And so they all said, man, they'd really like to have some. So Lenny went out in the field, and he picked, I don't know how many dozens of corn. And what impressed me, there were 10 kids, and there were Mennonites, and there was a Catholic, and there was a Lutheran, and there was UCC, and I'm thinking, boy, this was really neat to have all. And then they got talking about religion. Don't ask me how. I think I sent some to you, Norman. I don't think you remembered it. And I don't know. And then every now and then they'd say, "Hey, Mom, what do you think about this?" And I never forgot that. I think thinking how, all these different religions, we were just, then everybody got along. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if any of them remembered or not, but I do. I won't forget that.
That's one of the important things of one generation telling the next generation. And I think we probably have moved away from that a little too much. That it's important that our generation, even though we're older, we still pour our lives into the next generation down by telling exactly the kinds of things you're telling tonight of what's important in life. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
But anyway, I was cooking corn on the cob. I don't know how many dozens we went through because there were 10 kids, and they were eating corn on the cob and my husband would go out in the field and he'd pick it and husk it and bring it in, and I'd be cooking it. It was a fun time, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Remember that.
That's good.
And so then the one was with my spiritual life. Well, Lenny had, he always said when he was 12 years old, all he wanted in life was have a Harley-Davidson motorcycle and be a truck driver. And he accomplished both of them. And through his life, he had about 7 Harleys.
Wow.
From the time he was 15 until he had to get rid of his when he was about 86 or something. And he was a truck driver for 51 years.
Wow.
But his one experience with being a truck driver, I guess I told you that. He was driving for Hatfield, and it was early morning, 6 o'clock in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And it was that time already, it was a very drug-infested area. I mean, he'd say all the drug deals he saw going on. And then this one, it was March the 15th, 1995. I can remember it. And he got out of his truck to unload his load, and a guy came up to him and says, "Do you need help to unload?" He says, "No." And the next thing he knew, a guy was behind him and hit him on the head with a claw hammer. And he kept hitting him on the head, and they wanted his money. And he always carried his wallet in here, in the side pocket, not in the back pocket. So he had his hand here, and they kept hitting him, and then they threw him in a tiger that was laying there in the parking lot, and all of a sudden he saw blood just running down his face, and he was getting weaker, and he said, well, now I know what it's going to be like to die, because he thought he was going to die.
Sure.
And I know after this happened, different people asked him, and I did too, were you afraid? He said, no, why would I be afraid? He knew where he was going. It didn't bother him at all. And anyway, and then in the meantime, the boss of the place came out, and he said he heard the noise, but he thought it was a drug deal going bad. And so then when he saw it was him, and then he called 911 right away, and he came to visit him in the hospital the next day, and he really apologized. He said if he'd have known it was him, it wouldn't have been. But he had 85 stitches, and he was there from Tuesday to Friday. And they never cleaned him up. He often said he wondered how many pebbles they stitched in his head. And it was just, and we went up to see him that night, the kids and I, and his head looked like a basketball. He was just, it was awful. His eyes were all swollen. And the next day, he said he went through they were pushing him for the x-rays, and this guy came up to him and said, are you the one I brought in yesterday? He was an EMT.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. He looked at him, he says, I didn't think you'd make it, he said. But, and then, I have to tell you the story how we kidnapped him out of the hospital. That was the worst hospital. It was horrible. If you're ever in Elizabeth, New Jersey, don't go to that hospital. I mean, they didn't do anything for him, and then his supervisor, about Wednesday, and there was no cell phone, so he called me in at the desk, and then he said, we got to get him out of that hospital, he said. And he says, talk to the doctor. I'm coming to pick him up. And then I said, well, I don't know. I'll try. And I did talk to the doctor, and I said, they want to take him home. Oh, no, this is the best hospital. You have to leave him here for surgery, and all this and that. Well, no, nobody said anything about surgery. And then, that morning, the nurse came in and said, we're moving you to another room till Monday for your surgery. He says, no, you're not. I'm going home, he said to the nurse. And knowing him, he wouldn't, he's very docile, but he really talked out. Anyway, and then Lori and I stayed overnight, and Stan that's his supervisor, got everything ready for us, and he said, at 8:30, I'm coming to pick you up. No, he had a taxi ready for us. And so we took the taxi to the hospital. He said, I'm going to pick him up at 8:30. He says, be ready. So at 8:30, he comes walking in the room. He says, let's go. He says, don't say anything to the nurses. The nurses were saying, Mr. Landis, you can't leave. He says, watch us. And out we went. And Stan says, don't even talk, don't even look around. And we went out there, and here we were. I had hold of his one hand, Lori had hold of his other, and here this guy just had his head bashed in. And we went out there, and we made it. And I didn't know if we'd hear bells and whistles or what, but we got out in the car, and we didn't stop for a while until finally we left our breath had, and then we were safe. Nobody never heard anything like. But he did have surgery then at Lehigh, and a week or so later, because he had 7 plates put in his eye because his bones were all broken around here, and his eye was starting to droop. So that was a really experience. And then when he had a heart attack. He had a triple bypass and an aortic valve replacement in 2015. So then the next year, 2016, he got out his motorcycle, and he thought, he was gonna, he could drive. Well, it fell over on him. But then, sometime later, he tried it again, and then it fell over him again, and his foot was caught underneath. So he called me, and I went out. He says, can you lift this motorcycle to get my foot out? 700-pound motorcycle. I said, Lord, I need help. That's all I said, and I picked it up. And he got his foot out, and I thought, boy, his foot's going to be broken and everything. Not a crack, not a bruise or anything. Wow. He was just, it was just one of the things that, it was the way the life was. And then what was really hard for him was when Bobby died 3 years ago
Yeah.
of cancer at 64. You don't expect your kids to die before you. That was, and he had cancer, and that was a hard time for him. He used to say, I wish it was me. Why couldn't I die? You know, I said, well, it's not, you're not time. And then, so then he was diagnosed then with cancer of August of 2022, and then he died January the 15th of 2023. And he was on hospice for 4 months, and he, you know, he didn't have pain, and he just, you know, he kept wanting to die, and he said, why can't I die? I said, well, your time isn't up yet. But we had 67 years of marriage, and we had a good marriage.
Yeah.
And
Well, what's it like now being a widow?
well,
Is it hard?
It's hard at times, but you just have to. I remember at the funeral meal, my nephew said to me, "Oh, you'll be all right. I know you'll be all right." He kept saying to me, and it's something you just have to accept. You can't. I mean, yeah, it was difficult. The first Christmas was last year, and I know we were at Anita, and all of a sudden I just lost it.
Sure.
And my great-granddaughter was wonderful, Sierra. She just came up to me. Well, Pop-Up's looking over you, she said to me, but you know, you just go on, and then when he was on hospice, he said, when I die, I want you to sell the house and go to the home. But we had our name in, and he was looking forward to coming, but he didn't get here, but. So anyway, and then the couple I sold the house to, his mother lives right across the hall from me, and
Wow.
and
You can't get away from neighbors.
and anyway, he worked down he drove truck at Hatfield for a while with him, and so you know, it's you know, so anyway, you know, I'm glad I'm here. It was the best move I could have made, and my kids are glad they don't have to worry about me anymore.
That's for sure. You know, Rhoda has an interesting verse. I've never seen this verse until she gave it to me. It says, I've carried you since your birth. I've taken care of you from the time you were born. Even when you're old, I'll take care of you. Even when your hair turns gray, I'll support you. I made you and will continue to care for you. I'll support you and save you. It's Isaiah 46. And as I've gotten to know Rhoda, knowing the struggle, I mean, what happened to Bob, when I heard about that, I could hardly believe it, because he's a young guy. And I still remember the stories of there being that long line of tractors, parade of tractors they had for Bob. And then hearing her story about Linford, and I thought, here's a woman that's had some struggles, and you may have had similar ones. But when she gave me this verse, I thought, talk about a woman who has understood the importance of God's faithfulness. Life is not trouble. One of the things our small group is memorizing is in John 16, it says, talking about peace, and it says, in this life you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And Rhoda, you know, as I've gotten to know her more and more, she is a person that shows that. God brings her through. She trusts a faithful God. And it's, you know, if you look back over your life, what do you want to sort of get or say, leave as a legacy to your kids or your grandkids? Or what would you like you to know that you passed on to your family?
Faith in God. So, you know, you just have to have the faith that things will, it's not going to be easy always, but You know, you just like Lenny said when he thought he was dying, he just said, well, you know, I'll find out what it's like to die. Because he knew where he was going.
Yeah, yeah.
And no, it's, you know, living alone like this, but I'm glad I'm here. I'm not really alone.
No, you're not alone.
I mean, it was the best move I could make.
Yeah.
I mean, because when I went from, he died in January, and then I moved here October the 23rd. So, and then there were some times there, you know, and I had nice neighbors. In fact, they come the last Wednesday of each month. There come neighbors we used to meet out there, and now they come here.
Oh, okay.
So it's you know,
Yeah.
I'm getting to see them yet anyway, and it's just, you know, it's difficult, but I'm glad I'm here. I mean, it's the best move I could make.
And you know, one of the things that they've identified for us older folks, where people really start to take a downturn, is isolation, where you're by yourself. And your mind just goes to the things that either you struggled with or just things that just aren't working out for you. And you go into depression. And that's one of the great things here about SMH, that we have the opportunity of not being in isolation. There's people here who want to talk with you, who want to be part of your life, and maybe fill in some of those little gaps that you miss right now. And it's important that you reach out to other people. You may be the minister or the pastor that God has called to help and encourage them. And see, that's how, just in meeting Rhoda, she has ministered to me, just her joy. We have a men's Bible study on Tuesday mornings. When we're done at 10:30, I always go next door to the quilt room, hoping she's going to be there. And Elva too, and Annetta. And, they bring such joy because they're working together, they're enjoying each other's company, and it's just great to see. And so be part of things like Rhoda sure is. So, you know, she has picked out a great song to finish up with here. It's on the other side of your little packet there. Precious Lord, take my hand. Let's sing this one together. That is a wonderful, wonderful song. It says a lot about you.
I liked it.
I thank you so much for doing this. I had to lean on her for months. I would always say, Rhoda, could I interview you? No. Then the next few weeks, Rhoda, I'll think about it. Then finally she said yes. And, this is great, great. Well, next month, we're going to try something we haven't done so far. And we're going to be having two people on stage on our porch. And it's going to be Ann and Ralph Leatherman. Ann and Ralph have demonstrated to me, the little bit that I've gotten to know them, what servants are. And I'm really looking forward to it. And so that's going to be the first Tuesday in January. I'm sorry, third Tuesday. Heather's got me all mixed up here. I'll blame it on her. On first Thursday, that's the second. Hopefully you'll have enough rest from New Year's Eve and you'll have slept in and we'll be ready for the second. In February, we're going to have Len Hurley. It's going to be an interesting one. Probably a lot of you don't know Len. And he's got a very interesting life story. And I don't know how many of you were here. We had I forget what they called it. It was a whole group of people lined up sitting here. And they were talking about, do you remember the name of that?
Aging gracefully.
Aging gracefully. And we thought, I wasn't going to go because I think I'm aging gracefully. But Jen said we need to go. So I figured, Jen says we need to go, we need to go. So we came here, and Henry Moore was there. And I thought, listening to him, I thought, that man is very wise. And so I happened to see him down at the gym and ask him, and he said yes. And then I had to check out with the guy's daughter first before I asked him, is Jim Moyer. When I think of baseball, I think of Jim Moyer, not Jamie Moyer. Jim, because Jim was Mr. Baseball here in Souderton. And so I asked Jill, I said, what do you think your dad would say? And she said, oh yeah, I'd go at him. So I asked Jim, and he said yes. So I can't wait till baseball season starts. So if everything works out, we never can tell how things work out. We're planned, and then we got a lot more people who've said yes. So we'll be going through spring and fall and summer, and so it'll be great. Rhoda, this has been great. I look forward to tonight for a long time. So let's give it, yeah. So now, if you're a Souder or a Berge or a Landis, or your name is anything else, you're related to her somehow. So come on up and you talk with her. Let's pray. Father, thanks so much for our evening together. Thank you for Rhoda, for the life that she has lived, her name and her testimony is just so strong here. And we pray that you would continue to use her and bless her. Thank you for her family. And we pray that you would be glorified through them. And our community here at SMH, that you would be the one that we focus on. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. And Merry Christmas from the front porch. This is